Hi, I'm Jason Gorby for That Shelf, and we're here to look at the Beatles Let It Be. Oh, that's the Ruddles, sorry. We're here to look at the Beatles Let It Be. Well, this is the record. We're here to finally look at the movie Let It Be, newly released, available on Disney Plus, 50 years in the making.
Big shelf.
So, any big Beatles fan is aware of the Let It Be film. Many people, millions, have watched the Peter Jackson 8-hour extravaganza. But all of that footage of the Get Back documentary was actually recorded when the Beatles were in a film studio, but also at Apple on Savile Row, recording the album that would become Let It Be, the famous rooftop concert, all these elements. And for more than 5 decades, this movie has been incredibly challenging to see. Yes, it was released on a pretty miserable DVD. There's a Laserdisc version, but it never got an official release. And one major reason for that is the band themselves weren't huge fans of it. They saw it within the lens of it being essentially a super negative representation of who they were. And it took until now, frankly, it took into the passing of 2 of the members, but also sort of an opening up the archive and a recognition of what this could actually do to actually have this film and this footage actually see the day. When I did my review immediately after watching the 8-something hours of Get Back, my wish, my dream, was that they weren't going to use Get Back to replace what had been released before. Michael Lindsay-Hogg, who had originally directed the film and actually released it, I had never seen it until just yesterday, actually. I was waiting for there to be a good version of it to see. I knew that the Laserdisc print was pretty poor, or at least the version used on the Laserdisc, and I thought, if it never came out in good quality, as soon as they started doing the archive stuff, this is what I was hoping for. Once I heard about Peter Jackson doing it, my dream was that since they already had the footage, they already had cleaned everything up, cleaned the audio up, etc., that they could go and make a frame-for-frame recapitulation, a re-release of this film so that we could see it with clear eyes half a century later. And I'm ecstatic because I think the Let It Be movie is extraordinary, especially the conversation it has with 2 things. One, our idea of the past, our idea of that era of the Beatles, and Get Back itself. I understand on a deeper level the choices that Peter Jackson made when you see the version that was released in the 70s, where you hear in Peter Jackson's version dialogue that is only sort of done in superimposition, or at least while the Beatles are playing the music, because that's the focus. It's truly remarkable. Peter Jackson's film even more rich. It makes this journey that you have with Get Back all the more engaging, and yet there are so many tiny moments that are echoed, and some of them are absolutely repeated, but other moments that are completely unique to the Let It Be film. These 2 films truly are my grand recognition while I was watching the film. I thought the 8-hour version was basically an extended cut, that you're just basically taking what was there before and sort of spreading it out. And it's actually, the 2 of them are fundamentally different about how they actually treat certain things, and it's really remarkable. There's a charm here, a sophistication, but it is interesting. There's even less of some of the things that I actually love about the Peter Jackson film. Certainly the Billy Preston stuff is even more minimized in the film. It's like he just shows up and they don't make a big deal about it at all. Finally, Billy Preston gets his due a little bit, but it explains as well about why there was so little footage of the rooftop. I bet every frame of Billy Preston playing that incredible electric piano part on the rooftop was used in PJ's version, just based on the sort of ethos of what the film was. It is clear that there was a large dynamic between director and the band. The band itself was having all this sort of passive aggression going on. But there's a joy, an absolute joy that's evident if you recognize the context of so much that's taking place. And it's fascinating for me to see how this film, which again was couching so much about certain critical responses, but also the response of the band themselves, who basically took in the bad press about it, or at least took in their own anxieties and sort of the stuff behind the camera that maybe we weren't privy to, where passive aggression actually just was outright aggression, but actually seen from a distance, it's just a beautiful way into a band recording these songs. You see the similar moments of them just coming up with elements that you know are going to be classics. You see that beautiful segment, I love it, where George Martin and George Harrison, the two Georges, are there helping Ringo while he's plucking away on the piano doing Octopus's Garden. Maybe not the favorite song of everybody, but you can see the changes. Even George Martin coming in and singing the line on top, when it is not part of this sort of monster 8-hour thing and isolated in that way, it just shows in just this one 10-second moment the way, the dynamic that they played out, the generosity that sometimes they had as competent songwriters, of knowing more sophisticated chord voicings at the time than maybe Ringo knew, but Ringo sort of had much better, frankly, is plucking away and doing it. There's actually a really tiny moment when he's doing sort of a jazz boogie with Paul McCartney. He's doing it with his left hand. Of course, Ringo's famously left-handed. He sort of plays drums backwards. And you can see him doing what should be a right-handed part with his left hand, and then when he is doing up the upper sort of octave stuff, he's actually holding his right hand, strong enough to actually do the right-handed piano parts. Tiny, tiny little moment, but just another echo of what sort of made their sound work. It's why his drums, he always does his fill sort of the backwards way from what another drummer would be. It's beautiful, the sound is great. It's allowed some of the sound moments where you see a little bit of the echo in the studios and stuff like that to play out. And yes, the entire rooftop sequence, as played in the Let It Be movie, is fascinating to see how it's cut together as basically this sort of 4-song concert film, which was the sort of apotheosis of this version of the film. And then you contextualize that, the camera in the sort of hidden booth, hearing the police, which you do not hear on this film at all. So the way these two films talk to one another is what I think is truly extraordinary. And the fact that here we are, with some distance, have a chance with this remarkable documentary to take it on its own terms, to take it in a way that even those that were there were unable to, because we have the distance of time. We recognize that, yes, this was the end of an era, but it was also the culmination of an era. It also showed what they had become, the sort of link that these 4 people had when they were making these absolutely remarkable songs. Even if you've watched the crazy 8-hour Get Back, this is an absolute must-see. If you haven't stomached the Get Back, I recommend you watching it and then dipping into the other one. It take many days to watch it, just like it's many days record it. Take your time with the Get Back film, but this, in some reasonably, let's say, 80-ish minutes, you get it. There is an introduction to Peter Jackson having an interview with the original director. It's a bit superfluous. They don't really get into the drama. They hint at it. Would have been nice for them to be a little bit more open and honest about what was seen at the time as a bit of a failure. Certainly within the context of all that playing out. We don't get much in the way of understanding about how this film was so different from the stuff that Help and Magical Mystery Tour, 2 film projects that had really gone awry before this, and you can see sort of where they were coming from, their hesitation about it. It just felt like yet another mode that they weren't actually able to accommodate. All of this stuff Beatles fans know already, and maybe audiences will have a time to actually explore deeper themselves, and new fans of this particular recording, new fans of this band. People coming, you just know the Beatles is just, oh yeah, they're this incredibly popular band. But it's hard sometimes to get past the sort of veneer of either their success or the sort of a negativity that some people lump upon them. I think that this film is an extraordinary insight into the recording. I think it's an extraordinary companion piece to Get Back, and I'm ecstatic that they've gone ahead and actually preserved this. Now all I have to say is we have a sort of not great Blu-ray release. I would love to see, like this is the actual album version of Let It Be that includes the Glyn Johns Get Back. I would love to see a proper 4K physical release, the highest resolution possible, the highest audio possible, potentially an Atmos mix, but also the original stereo mix included in physical form so that we can have it and not be strictly dependent on streaming. That is our look at Let It Be 5 decades after its release, and I could not be more thrilled to actually finally have had a chance to see it. For ThatShelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you next video. All the best. Take care.
ThatShelf.